A lot of you motherfuckers have been asking me, Daddy, Daddy, take us to the magical castle, Daddy. Take us to the castle. We want to go to the fairyland castle, Daddy. Well, point number one, motherfucker, I ain't your daddy. But here's the fucking castle, dude. Come on, oh, isn't it fucking awesome? If only I could afford more lights so you didn't see my fucking shadow. It has everything the castle needs. You know, like the fucking towers are here, the fucking spires, the little fucking flags. There's like Tinkerbell over here. I mean, I'm not kidding, but I wish it wasn't there. It kind of cheapens the whole thing. But there's a deer down there. It's amazing. It's a very nice deer, and you're never gonna see it unless you come to my domain, to my magical land. And this talk of magic is not incidental. I mean, we're here, we're about to be blessed. Some wisdom is about to be dropped on our faces, like in the Japanese porn of the wrong type. And it concerns our mutual idol, our mutual guru. And you know who I'm talking about, dude. You know how Saint Constantine always like just saw Jesus in the sky and then he converted, starting the Christian age in Europe. Well, much like Saint Constantine, when I look in the sky, I hear archetype, archetype, and then I see a red pill in the sky, dude. And then that red pill opens up and it's actually a representation of a two-dimensional red pill, and that is a representation of a four-dimensional red pill. And when that one opens up, there's a three-dimensional red pill, and then there's a rug for sale on Twitter. But after that, it's Youre Peterson, man. He's just out there, dude. He's the presence. He is the voice of wisdom in our age. And Youre Peterson is coming up with a new book, and it's called 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote to Chaos. And if you're wondering what's in the book, it's sort of, the title kind of contains it all, because it's a perfect representation of the content of his thoughts. Because the title kind of sounds like, the first part of it sounds just like your cliche sort of self-help book, like 12 Rules for Life. But then the antidote to chaos, like the word antidote and chaos, or something most self-help books wouldn't have on their titles. Like an editor wouldn't go for that shit because it's just kind of pretentious and doesn't seem straight to the point. Well, that's the Petersonian cherry on top of his banal book. Basically, it's just these completely banal, completely kind of linear and uninteresting self-help tips that you probably have heard a million times in your life, even if you've never bought a self-help book in your life. So it's just these cliches, and then they're kind of wrapped up in Youre Peterson kind of vintage kind of bullshit. Rambling about the lobster and the fucking origin of evil and all that shit. But at its core, it's just, these complete cliches, complete fucking banalities. So I knew this book was coming out for a long time, and of course I'm never going to read that shit, and I have no interest. But also, I've also knew that Youre Peterson has talked about these 12 rules in an interview with Dave Rubin. And so the thing about that interview is that it's fucking 3 hours long. And I've tried to conquer it. I really have tried to conquer it and extract what these fucking 12 rules actually were. But I never managed to do it. I mean, these two yentas, they fucking go on for fucking ever. And it's just, you can't stop these two motherfuckers. And it's like listening to them. I mean, I'd rather listen to people with developing dementia talking about their hemorrhoids than listen to that shit. Well, thankfully, recently I've discovered a channel that it's a parasitic channel that lives off of Peterson. And it actually, the man kind of dove into this ocean of verbal diarrhea and actually extracted these rules. He extracted these 12 rules. So we'll be watching, the edits I did of his clips. His logo sometimes appears there. It's an anime logo. And anyway, I'm not going to give equal footing to all of these 12 rules. My light just died. I'm not going to give, and it doesn't even look that much worse now. Anyway, I'm not going to give equal fucking footing to every one of these rules. I mean, they're like complete banalities. Like one of those rules is literally like lead a meaningful life. You know what I'm saying, man? So this is basically what I'm looking at. And you'll hear every one of those rules, but you're not gonna hear constructive fucking criticism of every one of those rules, all right, man? Fuck. I try not to ramble, I fucking try, but I always do.
But I thought the simplicity with which you laid this out was really kind of brilliant, because basically, as I said at the top, you're giving people 12 sort of ways to stop being pathetic. I mean, that's what it really struck me as. So I just want to, we can hit each one.
Yes, written from the point of someone who tried to stop being pathetic.
Fair enough. So this first one, and again, there was a simplicity to this that I loved. So the first one, rule number 1, stand up straight with your shoulders back. I love that one as the first one, because when I first started doing stand-up, I used to see a lot of guys hunched over the mic.
Yeah.
Really bad posture, well-known comics. And I always remember thinking, you got to stand up straight.
Yeah, well, you've got good posture.
Yeah, Dave, you have great posture. You gotta stand up straight. I used to see all these comics, and you gotta stand up straight and have good posture. You have excellent fucking posture, Dave. And this is why everybody knows you as the comedian's comedian. That's why when Chris Rock and Louis C.K. run into each other, they just swap those, Dave Rubin jokes, those Dave zingers as they call them, because they're so they hit you like a ton of bricks, those fucking jokes. I mean, you can't stop laughing. You just gotta work on your posture first. It's very important in the comedy world. It's your posture, Dave. You worked out your fucking posture. Like, I can't imagine a more unfunny person than Dave Rubin. Like, I don't know which universe, which dimension, which archetype I have to penetrate to, like, see Dave Rubin as capable of having humor. It's like the caliph of the Islamic State, Baghdadi. Like, I'd sooner go to his fucking show at the Improv than Dave Rubin. Well, talking to Dave Rubin has different effects on different people, and perhaps inspired by Dave's cognitive abilities and his level of insight and his overall mental capacity, Youre Peterson decided to leap into the ocean, all the way to the fucking cockroach of the ocean, which is the lobster. And Youre Peterson is gonna extract some lobster wisdom from us. It turns out that you and I are fucking archetypal lobsters, and motherfucker, assume your posture, dude. Assume your alpha lobster posture, man, for this one.
Yeah, in that chapter, I talk a lot about lobsters, which I kind of have an affinity for lobsters, and because the short story is that when a lobster loses a fight, because they're fighting all the time for dominance, let's say, in their hierarchies, he kind of crunches down, so he looks smaller. When he wins a fight, he stretches out, looks bigger, and so he's signaling to other lobsters the tally of his victories, let's say. So if a lobster has won a fight, he's more likely to win the next fight than you would calculate from having a tally of all his previous defeats and victories. And if he loses a fight, then he's more likely to lose the next fight. So that's that Matthew principle at work. Okay, so you think, well, so what? So what does that have to do with anything? It's like, okay, here, part of the kicker is, well, the lobster runs on serotonin, neurochemical. And if the lobster loses, the serotonin levels go down, and if he wins, the serotonin levels go up. And when the serotonin levels go up, he stretches out, and he's a confident lobster. And one of the consequences of that is if a lobster loses a battle, and you give him the equivalent of antidepressants, then he stretches out and he'll go fight again. So antidepressants work on lobsters. Right. And you think, well, who cares? It's like, no, you don't get it. We diverged from lobsters from an evolutionary perspective 350 million years ago, and it's the same circuit. It's absolutely unbelievable. And that shows you how deep inside you, how basic, how primordial that circuit is in you, that's sizing other people up and looking at where they fit in the hierarchy. Well, with human society, it's more like hierarchies of competence than dominance per se. And like if your serotonin levels fall, you get depressed, you crunch forward, and the whole, everything around you turns cloudy and black, and then you're inviting more oppression, right? And so you get into this bad loop, and so it's really important to, if you're trying to get your act together, it's really important to stretch yourself out and sit up properly, because it's part of the psychophysiological loop that can start you on the upward curve.
I've dove deep into my evolutionary history, bro, and I've connected to my beta lobster. I'm such a small, shitty lobster. Peterson, Peterson, extend the claws. Beta lobster. As many limbs as the lobster has, it's as many stupid and bullshit points Youre Peterson just made. The fact is that a lobster is a fucking insect. It's the insect of the sea. It doesn't have our same circuits. It doesn't have a fucking brain. It doesn't have a brain. It's a fucking insect. Its nervous system is built completely different. The fact that, there are some 300 million year old similarities, or that different chemicals, circle through us, is not evidence of anything except from, we fucking work with the same material in a sense. But the structures that these materials build are utterly and completely different. Lobsters don't have a fucking brain. And you know what else lobsters don't have? Lobsters don't have fucking hierarchies. A hierarchy, like you have a pack of wolves, or you have a pack of hyenas, you have primates, chimpanzees, gorillas, wolves, who are not primates, but they kind of work as a unit in a sense, or at least they coexist, and they protect each other and do other functions together. They hunt together, etc. Well, lobsters don't fucking have those fucking hierarchies. A fucking lobster, it sees another lobster, you know what its dominance response is? Its hierarchical response, fucking pounce on that motherfucker and try to eat them. They're fucking cannibals, the lobsters. That's why they can't be farmed. One of the reasons they can't be farmed is because these motherfuckers just fucking start eating each other. I mean, they have nothing. And even then, even at the conclusion of this story, it would make more sense to give fucking everybody serotonin if we have the same circuits, and fucking serotonin fucking changes everything. It's not a fact that a lobster changing his posture is going to increase his serotonin levels. I mean, a lobster having a different posture is probably just a reflex that has to do with the fact that it lost the fight, it got away from the lobster, and now it's going to preserve its limbs because, it's a reflex. It has nothing to do with fucking anything.
But I like that you started this with something physical, because all of us can do this. Everyone watching this today that's struggling with whatever they're struggling with can just work on that.
Yeah.
Davey, you figured it all out. You figured out. It's the posture, man. You're so right. You just everybody can just stretch it out. Just stretch it out. You're one of the Rohingya Muslims who were persecuted in Burma, and your whole village got burned down, and your relatives are killed or raped, and then you're a refugee camp in Bangladesh, and they don't want you there either. And just stretch it out, Davey. Oh yeah, Dave. Yeah, let's stretch it out. Let's stretch that shit out. Yeah.
Rule number 2: treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. I mean, it seems pretty clear to me what this means.
Yeah, well, that's an investigation into why people don't treat themselves well. And you can see that one of the stories I talk about is that people are more likely to give prescription medication to their pets than to take them themselves. Right. So
even in the United States, because we're pretty over-medicated here.
Even in the United States,
wow.
people will get the prescriptions, but they won't take the pills.
I give all my serotonin to my lobster. I come home from work and I see this beta lobster with shitty posture. Shitty lobster posture just sitting there in the aquarium. I give him that serotonin. He fucking... it's amazing. Youre Peterson, it's just, where do you pull these statistics out of? Where do you pull these statistics out of? I mean, which archetypal crevice in your body do you pull this shit out of?
Take care of your room, take care of your things, have some respect for yourself as a well, I would say in some sense as a miraculous being, because that is actually what you are. But that sort of borders on the new age, which I'm not very happy about that, but it's still the case. It's like you are there is a lot of potential within you, and there's many things that you can do, and you're necessary more than you think to the unfolding of things.
Bro, I'm sorry, you're not that necessary. I mean, you're not that necessary, not even to this like shitty YouTube channel with 130 subscribers. You're not even necessary here, you know. I could lose you and my life would go on the way it did before. Yeah, we're not really that necessary. We can cause some problems for other people, but I don't know that it's a testimony to us being necessary. But dude, yeah, very magical. You're magical, man. Don't let me discourage you from that. You're necessary and magical.
Rule number three, make friends with people who want the best for you. This is a particularly interesting one these days, I think, because we connect with people all over the world that we don't meet face to face.
It's okay morally to choose people that are trying to help you be better, and to shy away from people who are going to drag you down. So this image always comes to mind for me. You know, if you're a lifeguard and you want to rescue someone who's drowning, the way you swim up to them is like this, with your foot out. And the reason is, well, maybe they're panicking, and 2 drowned people is not an improvement over 1.
I'm coming, dude. I'm coming to get you, but I gotta have my foot out in case you're bipolar, you know? I'm coming, man. Anyway, I don't know. Is that real? I have no information about lifeguards, but I mean, it seems like from my experience of swimming, this is not like this is like some Peterson archetypal Olympics over here with this shit, with 1 foot out. What is the other foot doing? I mean, what the fuck are you talking about, man? But, you know, the thing about our age is that you really don't need to tell anybody to not use people. I'm sorry, to disregard people you can't use, because it's a narcissistic fucking age. So this advice just sort of pisses me off somewhat, because, you know, like, people bitch and complain about a lack of community, and they blame whoever the fuck for the lack of community, be it feminists or social justice warriors or whatever. I mean, people just blame all kinds of groups for the fact that they don't have a social life. But aside from technology and people moving around a lot, one of the reasons, you know, there is no community is just this kind of shit, where it's like, oh, you know, I'm meeting somebody and now I have to find out how useful they can be in my life, or how I could view them like some resource on Minecraft or some shit. I mean, it just promotes human consumerism. I mean, there are some people like who are easily used by others, and this advice can be useful to them, but basically it just sort of seems like a way to dump even more people from your fake friends list or whatever. I mean, it's just another excuse to disregard more people. The only exception to that is if you're a drug addict or an alcoholic, and you need to sort of, in that case, yeah, I mean, you need to disengage from that crowd, because it's just going to reinforce your old habits. But aside from that, it's just shitty, narcissistic, consumerist advice of treating people like some consumer goods that are gonna like fucking elevate you. Well, what about people who are on your level, who are not gonna elevate you, or neutral, or people who you can? It's just a fucking piece of shit advice, piece of shit, selfish, me first fucking advice that nobody really needs, except for all of us who are fucking narcissists and don't want to interact people or sacrifice anything for anybody else.
Number 4, compare yourself to someone who you were yesterday, not to someone else. Let's start that over.
Yep.
Just because I wanted to get it right. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Yeah, well, you got to improve, right? And so, and you might think, well, I'm a real fixer-upper, and I'm really embarrassed about that because there's 50 things wrong with me, and like, look at that guy, and so now I feel all terrible because of the comparison and all of that. And first of all, it's unfair.
Number 5, do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. This has sort of been a through line to at least the beginning part of our conversation.
Yeah, well, the first thing is, it's the monster thing, like the Beauty and Beast thing. You are not a good guy, and you will take revenge on your children if they misbehave. You think, oh no, I like my children. Oh no, I like my children. I like my children. Oh no, I like my children. No, you don't get it. We diverged from lobsters from an evolutionary perspective 350 million years ago, and it's the same circuit. Oh no, I like my children. I like my children. Oh no, I like my children. Oh no, oh no, I like my children.
This was actually the one useful advice that Peterson gave. I think it really holds some real insight. And basically what he was talking about is the fact that, let's say your kid throws a temper tantrum in a grocery store, and maybe you don't have time to address it at that point, and then when you come home you kind of seek revenge on your child for upsetting you instead of kind of disciplining your kid at the store. So it's kind of like, you know, in order to be an effective parent, you have to kind of look in the mirror and say, I'm a piece of shit and I have these petty emotions that I will, you know, subject my kid to. And so instead of kind of doing that in a haphazard way, you just sort of try to deal with the issue your child presents you with at the time that they're misbehaving. So you're just kind of doing it in a structural way as opposed to this emotional way where, you know, in other words, in order to assert your kind of moral authority over your child, you need to first realize your own profound pettiness and moral flaws, and then you could be a more consistent, effective parent if you do that. If all the fault lies just with your child, then you're going to be a shittier parent. And I actually think that this is good advice. I mean, I don't plan on having children unless I'm really rich. And because in other cases, it's just going to be a revenge all the time. I'll have revenge on my child just for breathing, you know. It's going to be like the shaking baby syndrome all day in the fucking crib, you know. It's like, why are you shaking the baby? Because it's fucking alive, bitch. That's why I'm fucking shaking this baby. Anyway, well, it's just I'm seeing things here, but I don't know what's going on, like flashes of light. It's just talking about lobsters has gotten me to this point. But yeah, this is good advice, I feel. This is insightful advice. I mean, I think that this is legitimately like solid fucking advice. And if all the other rules were like this, then I wouldn't be making fun of this video. But no, all the other rules are pretty much shitty, except for ones that are moderately shitty.
Rule number 6, set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world.
Oh, that's a rough one. That's about a mass murderer and about mass murderers.
Yeah. So I didn't get this far because, as I said, I just got this yesterday.
One, man.
Rule number 6, clean your hamster's cage and change his water bottle. Oh man, that's a deep one. That's a very heavy one. It's actually about pulling the plug on your mother who's in a coma. I just thought it was about hamsters. I didn't realize it went so deep.
It's like, I'm going to make my goddamn case. I'm going to take them out. And then it's more than that. It's like, I'm going to take them out and I'm going to do it with innocence first. Because that's the thing you got to get about the mass murderer types. Is like, they're not hunting down the guilty. That's too obvious.
Right.
They're hunting down the innocent. That's the best protest. That's why the guy shot up the elementary school in Connecticut. It's like, why do you shoot kids? Well, think about it. Well, I don't want to think about it. Well, that's for sure. You bloody well don't want to think about it. But you better think about it. It's like, well, that's where you go when you take that criticism of being approach. It's like, you don't get to do that. Not unless you want to end up there. It's bad. So what do you do instead? It's like, okay, stop doing stupid things.
Hey, Adam Lanza, clean your room, bucko. What happened to your crazy eyes? It looks like the fucking Lord Lucifer himself has emerged from hell and shot an archetype into your evil eye. What Jordan Peterson is talking about here is this idea that you can go onto this path of meaninglessness. You can just slip away from the anchors of kind of reality or morality or Christian archetypal morality or whatever, and then you go into this slippery slide into evil. And then when you hate existence itself, you're gonna take it out on people and you're just gonna become a mass murderer. And more or less, I think this is bullshit. I think a lot of like, whatever philosophy a mass murderer has, it's just a symptom of deeper processes in his brain, like deeper abnormal processes in his brain. It's kind of like whatever thoughts you have during a depression about you being worthless, or any philosophical thoughts you have, these thoughts are not the cause of the issue. These thoughts are just like the text that goes along after the music has already been written. I mean, there are millions of people in America, and I assume out of these millions, there are hundreds of thousands, 300 million people in America, and I assume out of these millions, there are like millions or maybe hundreds of thousands of people who think that life is meaningless and on all that jazz. That basically what I believe. But very few of these people commit mass murder. Like, you can count them on big mass murders, big school shootings. You can kind of count them on your fingers of your both hands out of a population of hundreds of millions. So yeah, there's something wrong with them, and I don't know exactly what it is. In some cases it could be explicit mental illness. In some cases it might be something else for which there is no kind of medical term as of right now. But yeah, I don't believe that it's just that Adam Lanza. I mean, look at him. The guy is fucking nuts. It's not like Adam was like sitting there and he could have been a normal kid, but he went on this nihilistic path and started reading Nietzsche in the wrong way or some shit. No, he's just a crazy fuck. And so there is no, there's as much sense as comparing our kind of moral journeys to Adam Lanza as there is comparing our psychology to that of a lobster. It just doesn't fucking make sense. And the last point I'll make, lest I ramble too long, is a simple point, and I'm going to be harping on it throughout my life and throughout this YouTube channel. And that's basically these antisocial killers, people who kill randomly, people who randomly rape, whatever. They're not encouraged in any culture. Like, they're a culture who makes excuses for rapists, but they don't positively encourage them before the rape happened. And, all that shit, women blaming. But overall, every culture condemns random killing. Like, there is no culture in the world where Adam Lanza is acceptable. But the dangerous violence comes from tribal violence, when one tribe goes against another tribe. This is how most of our ancestors who have been killed by another human, this is how most of them have died, in the context of war, in the context of tribal warfare, interreligious warfare, whatever. And for that to happen, there needs to be the reverse of meaninglessness. There needs to be hyper meaning. And I think that this hyper meaning that you can see in, of all cases, Nazi Germany, of course, the Trite one, people really had a sense of hyper meaning to what they were doing. And of course, the same is true for communism. So it's not actually a lack of beliefs, a belief in meaninglessness and nihilism that causes most suffering. It's actually a hyper sense of meaning. So Peterson is wrong.
Rule number 7, pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient.
Despite the fact that you're a fragile, damaged, mortal creature, you found something to do that announced itself as worthwhile. Mm-hmm. That's meaning.
Rule number 8, tell the truth or at least don't lie. This has been a sort of theme of everything we've been talking about.
Well, telling the truth is hard, because you have to know the truth. And that's hard. But you can know when you're lying. Sometimes you don't know, because what the hell do you know?
Tell the truth, which you don't know the truth. I mean, you might know it, you're kind of grasping at it, but at least if you can't tell the truth, at least don't lie. And when you're lying, you could actually be telling the truth, because what the fuck do you know? And this leaves me kind of very confused, but I have a way out. Sometimes I start talking and I don't know if I'm telling the truth or I'm lying, but what I do in this situation, I just kind of whip my dick out and I'm like, look, the giraffe has a few friends, and I start juggling the balls and ends the conversation every time. It's like, thanks, Dr. Peterson.
Rule number 9, assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. I have a little of that at the moment.
Yes. Well, that's what a good conversation is about. The best example of this is when you're having an argument with your intimate partner, let's say. It's like, because you're going to want to win. And then, especially if you get angry, because anger wants to win. It's okay. So then you got to think, okay, well, wait a second. We better better sort out what winning means here.
Yeah, hopefully winning doesn't mean what it means to a lobster, which is kind of consumption and cannibalistic death. It's like, Becky, clean the kitchen, bucko, or assume the lobster alpha female stance, or I'm gonna fucking start consuming your flesh, starting from your head.
I like this one, and I mean, this is very clearly what you do. Be precise in your speech. Rule number 11, do not bother children when they are skateboarding. That's a very specific one there.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's an essay about masculinity, mostly. You know, I used to watch kids skateboard on St. George Street, which is kind of cool, you know, because obviously St. George is the dragon slayer. That's the street I work on, which I think is quite funny. And anyways, these kids used to, you know, they're teenagers, young teenagers. We had these long bar hand railings going down some shallow stairs, but a fairly good flight of them, and they would board slide down these rails. It's crazy. It's concrete that's pebbled. It's like, you don't want to land on that.
You probably heard a lot of bones crunching over the years. Yeah.
Watching them, it's like, you know, and they didn't have much protective gear on, and, you know, and eventually the university put up things to stop them, you know, from doing this, which I complain about in this chapter for a bunch of reasons. But, like, I liked watching those kids. I like watching skateboarders do those crazy things because they're trying to become competent. Like, and they're facing danger. They don't want the damn protective gear. Like, sometimes it's just stupidity. It's like, wear a damn helmet, you know? But sometimes it's not. It's like, no, I don't want to wear a helmet. I want to expose myself to this danger. It's not that I'm stupid. Maybe it is. You know, I'm just being careless.
Right.
But maybe it's not. It's like, no, I'm facing the danger. I'm trying to master it. And if you watch kids board slide down like handrails, if you don't think that that's courageous, then you're, and maybe stupid. Those two things aren't so easy to distinguish.
Yeah.
But it's brave. And when they do it, it's like amazing. It's impossible to do that. You jump in the air, you grab your skateboard, you balance on this stupid rail, you slide for 20 feet.
This is an excellent rule, and I completely 100% agree. I always let the boys skateboard on the rails, very dangerous, and I like seeing it. And basically, I want them to fall down and die because I really hate teenage boys of any racial demographic, of any income range. I just really hate teenage boys and young adults, young males. I really sort of hate them, and I wish them death. But the overall point is kind of, again, you know, it's kind of an interesting one because there's a push and pull here. Like, on the one hand, kind of doing dangerous things is part of being a young man, I guess, doing stupid, dangerous things. Like, I used to climb these hills in the park with my best friend, and like, looking back on these hills now that I walk by them, it was like pretty stupid. It was just pretty stupid to climb them. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. We had no gears. They were pretty fucking, steep. But this is what they did. When I was growing up in Russia, you know, there was a lot of crime. There was a lot of chaos because the Soviet Union collapsed, and it's the wild 90s in Russia. And we just like ran around everywhere and really had no restriction on our movement. And that was really fun. Were either of these two things necessary to my development? No, I don't think so. Did any of these things significantly increase a chance of danger? No. Did any of these things marginally increase the chance of danger or death? Yeah, they did. So you have to at least acknowledge that. And yeah, it's kind of, I hate the whole yuppification of everything. People sort of, you know, you have a Coke and they're like, oh, that's unhealthy. Or, you know, I still think that smoking is sexy, not with this fucking car battery, but I mean, in a literal sense. I think it's still hot and sexy, and when I see people, even if it's just some office frau, overweight, I still think, hey, here's a cool broad over there, you know, damaging her lungs, just because it's such a rebellion against this kind of health consciousness and shit like that. But kids are not doing it for any profound reason. There is no kind of deep philosophical meaning. I haven't heard of any skateboarders achieving anything in life. aside from skateboarding if they went professional. So it's just like this kind of seeing this kind of a deep philosophical undercurrents is kind of in a way it's a nice aspect of Peterson, but in a way it's not, because in his case the undercurrents he sees are mostly like stupid and bullshit. Like if he saw undercurrents that were false but were at least more intricate and interesting, if you know what I mean, like if it was like good fiction, then I would say and this for the most part is bad fiction. Like this rule was not so horrible, but most of it is like it's just fucking lobster grabbing your archetypal balls and shit. Like that's usually what we're served up.
I'm a dog guy. You've met my dog. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street.
Well, it's funny that you said you're a dog guy, because about the first 3 pages of the chapter are actually an apology for not including dogs. Yeah,
Okay.
I had a dog,
All right, very good,
so
very good.
I start by talking about dogs quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
I start by talking about dogs, then I move on to the gerbils to cover the gerbil owners. Then a lot of people like parrots. I talk about saying hi to a parrot at the pet store and teaching him some words. And then I move on to the cats. I know everybody doesn't like cats. Sometimes I like cats. I'm more of a dog person, but I could go. I'm non-binary. I like them all, but gotta cover all these demographics to sell the books.
Tragedy, really, about pain and the pain of caring for someone, especially with children, and what you have to do when you're in a situation where tragic things are happening in front of you and you're somewhat powerless in the face of them, And part of that is you have to keep your eyes open for the little opportunities, for the redemptive elements of being to sort of pop themselves up. So I talk a little bit about this cat that's across the street named Ginger. When things are not good, and hard, then you get these little moments where a little bit of possibility still shines through, and you got to take those moments when you get them. And so that's what that chapter is about. It's about how to manage when things are too much. And there's some practical advice in there. Like one of the things you have to do when things are just going to hell in a handbasket, let's say, is you got to also shrink your temporal horizon.
Gotta shrink that horizon, man. You gotta shrink that horizon. Well, this brings us to the end of the 12 Rules of Life by Youre Peterson. I know I'm talking to nobody in particular right now. Maybe one stoner zoned out when starting this video and is now waking up with vomit covering his face and hearing my voice, and like fucking this video at this point, I don't know how long it went. I can never completely measure that shit, but it probably went for some fucking time. And here are my concluding thoughts about Peterson. Like, people are different, and I'm gonna say something elitist right now, but people have different cognitive capacities or different potentialities for different insights. Let's say somebody could be brilliant in math or brilliant as a computer programmer, and yet their insight into kind of navigating life on a philosophical level is very low. And so these banalities could sound kind of insightful to him, even though to me they're just kind of recycled crap. And so maybe in that case, Peterson does some good work for people who find this stuff appealing, to people in whom this generates some sort of, I don't know, potentially positive outcomes in life. Just, even just hearing probably some of this positive shit, it's just serotonin, like serotonin to the lobster. And so they kind of get that posture like Dave does. Dave really kind of got that point about the posture. Everybody. So yeah, I'm sure somebody kind of benefits from these recitations of banalities, but I don't at all. I don't benefit from this at all. And there are different animals on Peterson's Noah's Ark, and we got the lobster, we got the cat, we got all this shit. So I hope, I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I've just been fucking working on this stupid video for so long. Usually I just like take one video and like paste it into the editor, and then I cut it. Here it's like 12 different videos, and it shouldn't be a challenging task, but I'm very lazy and have relatively little time, so I've been really like consumed by this stuff. But now I'm just staring at it and I'm wondering what's the point. I mean, Jordan Peterson has not been an antidote to chaos in the context of my life. He has been a precipitator of chaos. But listen, hope you're having a good day, whoever you are, and tune in for more of this shit.